Christian parenting.
Whether we like it or not, we are in the middle of a culture war, and that war centers on the family. Join us for this important conversation today on Family Vision.
Hi, my name is Lainey Rienow. Welcome to Family Vision with my parents, Dr. Rob and Amy Rienow, strengthening families through practical, encouraging, and real conversations.
Hi, Rob Rienow here with Visionary Family Ministries. Thank you again for taking time to be a part of our Family Vision community. We appreciate it. Well, you don't need me to tell you that we are in the middle of a culture war. Now, this is not a war that Christians declared on anyone, but this is a war that has been declared on us and declared on God's truth from the very beginning. And so much of that culture war, so much of the spiritual attack we're seeing in our culture and cultures around the world centers on family. Today, I wanted to share with you a conversation that I had with Chris Brooks. Chris Brooks is the host of Equipped with Chris Brooks on Moody Radio, and we dig into this issue of what exactly is this cultural attack on the family, why is it happening, what is so important about it, and what can our churches do to help stem the tide.
Today, we're going to have a great conversation about the role our families play in transforming the culture. And in particular, what we're going to look at is how our perceptions about family impacts our own lives in the culture. How are you feeling about family nowadays? Are you excited about the thought of marriage? Are you excited about the thought of children? Are you excited about the concept of large families? You know, I believe that the Bible promotes all three. I believe the Bible promotes marriage. I believe that the Bible celebrates children. Children are a blessing, not a burden. I think these are countercultural messages. I believe the Bible also promotes large families. But I also believe that our society discourages all three of these things. Well, is there a price to pay when we allow our view and vision of marriage, of parenting, children, and family to be more influenced by secular forces than they are by Scripture? Is there a price to pay? Well, a recent article says yes. Business Insider, which is a business magazine, recently released an article, actually just today released an article. Now, this is a shocking headline, but I want to read it to you. It says, Japan's sex problem is setting up a demographic time bomb, and it could be spreading. Japan's sex problem is setting up a demographic time bomb, and it could be spreading. Well, if ever there was a headline that captured your attention, it's this headline. The article is written by Chris Weller, and what Chris does is he explains that for the past 25 years, Japan has seen falling fertility rates, coinciding with widespread aging or an aging population, and this worrisome trend has now reached a critical mass at epidemic level known as a demographic time bomb. And he says last year, Japan gave birth as a nation to roughly 1 million babies. Roughly 1 million babies in 2015. Meanwhile, 1.3 million people died in their country. So there was a net loss of 300,000 humans in Japan last year. Now, that is significant, in particular, if you kind of forecast that trend. Now, Business Insider is writing this article from a non-Christian business or economic focus. So there's a lot of questions they're not going to ask that I think you and I need to ask as Christians. For example, why is this happening? What are the causal factors? And what do we need to know about the spiritual condition that would lead to this type of phenomenon? Well, the good thing about economists is they do ask some of these social science questions. And so they begin to get into why some of this falling birth rate, why it might be happening, some of these causal factors. But they know that Japan is only one of many developed nations that are headed this direction. And they list some of the nations that are in trouble. And guess whose name shows up on that? That's right, U.S. of A. The good U.S. of A. We're on that list. The countries that they're most concerned about are the USA, Denmark, China, and Singapore, right? That has falling fertility rates and whose nations are currently not replacing their population, those who are passing or dying in their population. So there's a huge concern. So what are the causal factors? Well, there are attitudes concerning men and sexuality. One of the things they mention here is that men in Japan are losing interest in sex and physical intimacy altogether, which is a very interesting statement in and of itself. But they go on to say that because of this, there's changing attitudes concerning the role of women in society as well. Women in this industrialized society are delaying marriage or foregoing marriage altogether because of a perception of a lack of options. Does that sound familiar? There's a lot of women, some that are even listening to me right now, that are delaying marriage, that are foregoing marriage altogether because of perception of a lack of options. And many women in Japan are choosing work over family, choosing work over family. This is again what happens to a country when there is an anti-family, anti-marriage, anti-childbearing vision for that country. When those forces, those perceptions are at work. And my concern for you and I is not only are those forces strongly at work in our country, but they are also strongly impacting those of us who say that we are Christians, believers in Christ Jesus. So today, here's my goal. I want to get you excited about family again. I want you to get excited about marriage, about children, again, seeing them as a blessing, about large families. And to help me accomplish that, I've invited in a good friend, Rob Rienow. You've heard about him. His book is our product of the month. So I'm glad to have Rob in studio with me. He's the founder of Visionary Family Ministries. He is an international conference speaker and author of several books. The one that we're featuring today and throughout the month is Visionary Parenting. How you doing today, Rob?
Thank you so much for having me with you. I've been looking forward to this.
Man, when I read the report about Japan, it tells us a lot about how ideas have consequences, perception have consequences. And I love to just start here. What do you think as a pastor when you hear about a country that in its public policy, in its attitude, has adopted a kind of anti-family, anti-marriage, anti-childbearing mindset and the consequences of that?
One of the things that we're seeing all around the world right now, and clearly in the United States, is almost all the cultural battles, the cultural issues are centered on Genesis 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, that's right.
Genesis 1, 2, and 3. God made the world. We're not here by chance. We're not here by random evolution. God created a man. God created a woman. God created marriage. God created sex and babies within marriage. We are fallen. We cannot perfect ourselves. Every one of those things are the core battles on the headlines all over the place. And so as our culture departs from those Genesis 1, 2, and 3 truths, we see the disintegration of the family. We see the disintegration of the culture.
You know, I had a group of millennials in studio with me, Rob, not too long ago. And I think as a pastor, what they helped me to see is how we take for granted the arguments of Genesis 1, 2, and 3. And we assume that those who are sitting in our pews know those arguments, right? And they begin to say to me, hey, nobody's ever explained to us why marriage and family is a great thing, right? We've seen the ballot box wars. We've seen the church profess really clearly what they're against. But I guess my question to you, Rob Rienow, do you feel as a pastor, as someone who looks at the church broadly, that we've done a good job explaining to Gen Xers, millennials in particular, why God's vision for the family is the best vision for us and for the culture?
Well, without question, we haven't done that. We work with churches all around the country on helping them get a vision for an intentional ministry in the church to marriages and an intentional ministry in the church to parents. And we start off with, okay, what is your plan right now as a church to intentionally equip people for their most important and most difficult ministry, which is at home.
Yes.
Your ministry to your husband, your ministry to your wife, if you're a married person, the most difficult ministry of your life and the most important calling on your life.
Yeah.
And what percentage of our churches have an intentional plan to equip people for that, equip people for parenting? And is there the message for the teenagers that are in youth groups all around the country that, hey, you know what the most important thing you need to be doing right now as a young Christian is? Preparing your character to be a godly husband, to be a godly wife, godly mother, godly father, because that's going to be your most important ministry. That message is few and far between right now.
So my wife and I, when we were engaged 20 years ago, we got married young, right? We got married at 20. But while we're going through premarital counseling, counselor asked us, who is your role model for marriage and family? And do you know, we didn't have one couple that we could look at and say, that's the couple we're aspiring to be. We had both come from broken families that have challenges, and I thank God for my mom and dad. I'm blessed to have them, but our families had struggles, right? So the only couple we could name at the time were the Cosbys, right? We had this TV show, and at the time, this TV show was the personification of the all-American family, right? And I think, Rob, if that was the case for us 20 years ago, how much worse must it be today? And I would imagine there are a lot of millennials, a lot of Gen Xers that are listening to me right now that say we don't have anyone that we can look to give us guidance on what the purpose of the family is. So let's talk about that today. What is the purpose of the Christian family for the person who's never been taught that?
Yeah, absolutely. You lock yourself in the room with the Bible and you search what all that God has said on this. I want to use kind of a churchy term. I don't mean to be too churchy, but I want to suggest that God created the family as a discipleship center. God created the family as a discipleship center. Now, discipleship's a churchy word, but let me put it this way. You're talking about the millennials and the Gen Xers, right?
Yes.
If there is one message that if you're a churchgoer, if you're a millennial and you're a Gen Xer, you've been growing up in church, you've been doing maybe 5, 10, 15 years in church. If there is one message I will bet you that you have heard over and over and over again from your pastor, it's this: you need to be in a small group. You need to be in a small group. You need to be in a discipleship small group. Man, you got
a life group, a connection group.
You got to do life together. You got to be an authentic community because discipleship happens in real relationships.
Yes.
All right.
Guilty as charged.
All right. Now listen, discipleship small groups are great out there. Okay, fantastic. But you see, God believes in discipleship small groups too. He just has another name for them. He calls them families.
Yes.
Where people are going to do life together.
Yes.
Where discipleship, now when we say discipleship, we mean spiritual transformation, the sanctification of your life, the fighting against sin and pursuing holiness, where that's going to happen in authentic community. I always ask the people, are you looking for a place that's authentic? You looking for a place that's really real? They all raise their hand. Oh yeah, I want a place that's authentic. I say, well, how about you go home?
That's right.
You go home and close the door. I guarantee you will find authenticity in your house. Now, it may be authentically bad, right? But you see, God built the family as the most powerful discipleship small group. Here's something. Who you are at home is who you really are. That's the real me. My real character comes out in my house. My real character doesn't come out at church or on the radio today or at the supermarket. It comes out at home. And God built the family so that it's an amazing purpose. Look at this. Imagine if your real character came out at church and school and work. I mean, they'd kick you out everywhere, right? Yeah. So the real me, the real you, comes out at home with the people God created to love us unconditionally, stick with us, and help us become more like Jesus.
Yeah.
But we don't understand that's the plan. Yes. So when the real character of a family member comes out at home, under the pressure of the marriage, under the pressure of siblings, under the pressure of parenting, we think, well, you just got a problem and you need to go get some help.
Yeah. So I love it because what I hear you saying, again, using another Christian term, that the family is really God's context or lab for sanctification, right?
Absolutely.
That's where he shapes us. And this whole concept of sanctification is us becoming Christ-like.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And I'd love to hear your questions. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know we just sort of scratched the surface. In fact, in our next episode, we're going to press in deeper on some of these issues and some of these questions facing the Christian church and Christian family today. But I'd love to hear from you. You can reach me at podcast@visionaryfam.com with your comments and questions. And if there's a resource that you really want to do a deep dive into what is the purpose of family, how can we capture a distinctively biblical Christian vision for family life and advance the gospel through a unity of the church and the home, our book, Visionary Church, How Your Church Can Strengthen Families, would be a great place to start. You can find Visionary Church wherever you buy your books or at our website at visionaryfam.com. And I look forward to spending time with you again on our next episode of Family Vision.